Denise Taylor, and I am so excited that you tuned into this episode of the First Wives Club Love Talk. Love Talk is our platform where we talk about love with wives in mind. We're going to bring to the table those people who have all sorts of experiences, both good and bad, so that we can learn and develop and be encouraged by one another. Today's episode features someone that I think is just a precious soul. First Lady Robin L. Burns, along with her husband, oversee a ministry in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Jericho Church Without Walls is where I had the opportunity to attend and serve when we lived in Wisconsin. I asked her to come to the table and help us explore what it is to walk in her shoes, those First Lady shoes. Now, before we get going, as always, this episode is being brought to you by the First Wives Club Love Walk program. It's a program where I, as the marriage accountability coach, come alongside to encourage you, to motivate you, inspire you, and more importantly, help you to grow personally so that you can soar relationally. That coaching program has a new cohort that begins every month. So don't miss your opportunity to take part. The deadline to enroll every month for the next month is on the 25th. And so as that date approaches, really give earnest thought to being a part of that program. That program will help us unpack those things that may be standing in the way of us truly growing together. Now, let's tune into this episode and let's discover more from the educator, the motivator, the inspirer, and yes, First Lady, Robin L. Burns. I'll see you on the other side.
All right.
I'm so excited to have today First Lady Robin L. Burns.
Woo.
Very, very excited that she has taken time out of her busy schedule to join us. So thank you for making time for us today.
Oh, Sister Denise, thank you. It is my sheer pleasure to be here. I'm telling you, I'm truly humbled and honored to be here. Anytime I get a chance to speak and come before people and share, I'm honored because I know that there could be other people that you've allowed to come and do this, but I'm thankful. So thank you very much.
You know, I'll tell you one of the things before I let you introduce yourself. When people hear First Wives Club, it's a few questions I get all the time. Is this just for First Ladies? Or do you have to be his first wife? And I'll just give you some context. First is just an indication of coming from the background to the forefront and making yourself a priority. And so, no, this community is not filled of first ladies, and no, this community is not filled of first-time wives even, but it really is a mantra to say, make yourself a priority and important. So with that, please tell us a little bit more about your family, yourself, your husband, anything you would like us to know.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, I truly, and this is the church girl in me, but, I got to give God thanks and praise for who he is and who he's allowed me to be. He has truly kept me, Denise. I mean, he has done amazing things. I could spend all day, all my life talking about God and how he has been there. And so I have to give him his props first and foremost, because had it not been for him, I really don't know where I would be. Yeah, I kind of know where I would be. I'd just be out there in the streets doing my thing. But he kept me, he preserved me, he saved me. And so I'm thankful to him. A little bit about me. I tell people all the time, people talk about GI, Gary, Indiana, but I'm from Gary, Indiana. And that's my hometown. That's where I grew up until the age of 18. And I had some challenges there. It was a life. I lived in the hood, first of all. I tell people I lived in the hood. We lived in the ghetto. We lived in the projects, but we didn't know at that time that it was the projects. We just knew we lived where we live, and we had community. We were who we were. But in the midst of that, there was drug infestation. I was surrounded by people who were doing drugs. Actually, I had some family members that got involved. And thankfully, they got out of that, but I was surrounded by all of that, but I still had love in the midst of that. So it was crazy. It was kind of a crazy atmosphere, but I was good. I was safe. I was loved. My parents had divorced at an early age. For me, I think it was like I was like 3 or 4, but I still knew my mom. I mean, I lived with my mom, but I still knew my dad. My dad came around. But anyway, so that's how that was. And then we moved from the hood, as we say, to a house. And so I felt like I had
Moving
moved on,
on up.
moving on up. Yeah, yeah, it's like, oh man. So that was good. But just being in that atmosphere, and then pushing the story forward, when I got 18, of course, I wanted to go to college. And so I left from Gary, went to a small hick town. Ooh, I went to a small town, Galesburg, Illinois, and got my bachelor's degree in education there. The life there, whoo, I was just loose. I was free, girl. The nice little Robin that they knew in Ivanhoe Projects and in Terrytown. I don't know where that came from, but anyway, I got loose. And so I knew about God. I knew about God. My mom, when we were in the projects, we lived right across the street from a church. And so my mom sent me to church. So I was exposed to church and all that. And I used to love the music and all that. And then afterwards, we'd go to the store and get our little candy, our penny candy, and just have a good time. So it was, my life was good. It was good. But then, like I said, as I grew up and called myself, being half grown or whatever, I got into life. I experienced life. And I still got my degree in education, or teacher's education. I said teacher, elementary education. And from there, I went or came to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I was looking for an area where I wasn't too far from home. And so, and I knew I could travel. That was a 2-hour drive. So I could go back from Milwaukee to Gary. And so this became my home. In the midst of that, while I was in college, I was promiscuous. And so, and I got tired of that. And I've shared with people before, I made some decisions that I really regret, but God delivered me. He saved me. I said, God, if you get me out of this, I promise you, and I know we were told to never promise God, but I said, God, if you get me out of this, I promise you, I will live for you, because I was tired of looking for love in all the wrong places and all of that. And granted, I was loved by my family, but I wanted something different. And so when I found that different wasn't good, it was like, I don't want this anymore. And even during my college years, I went to church. I think it was just instilled in me, but didn't have a relationship with God. Here it was, August of '89, as I graduated from college, and my boyfriend at that time, he lived in Chicago, and so we were saying our goodbyes, and he introduced me to Christ right there in the car. Denise, it was amazing. I remember that. I remember him introducing me to Christ. I accepted Christ. And then it was like, yes, I'm getting ready to live a new life. I'm getting ready to be free from all these raggedy relationships. And it's going to be me and Jesus. We're going to conquer the world. I'm going to be this evangelist and da-da-da-da-da. And I had already said, I don't want to get married because I was in raggedy relationships. And I didn't want to have any children because I heard it was painful and I didn't like pain. But God knew, girl, God knew. I'm so glad he knew, because I'm telling you, it was just gonna be me and Jesus. But, yep, moved to Milwaukee, got here, didn't know anyone, but my girlfriend and I, who had been best friends since 6th grade, we traveled from elementary to high school to college to even Milwaukee. So we were there all those years. And then when I came across this man, remember I told you I didn't want no man, I didn't want to be. So I met my husband he was an engineer at the school that I was teaching at. Okay, and he was coming down the hallway to my classroom. Now, this was early on. This was like October. I remember it was October because it was my birthday month. And so he was coming down the hallway to my classroom, and I didn't realize that all the other teachers were gone because I was so engaged in my work. And so he came to my classroom, and then he started talking to me, and so it was kind of casual. And then the conversation continued on, and I was like, who is this guy? And then I realized that I was the only one left in the school, and I was like, oh Lord, get me out of here. This man gonna do something to me. I'm telling you, I still remember that thought in October of '89. So then I said, well, let me get ready to go. And he said, well, can I buy you a soda? Now I was like, soda? What's a soda? Because back in Gary, it was pop. I said, no, no, thank you. He said, well, can I get your number? I'm like, oh, Lord. I said, let me call you. Give me your number. Like, dude, I just got saved. It's me and Jesus. I don't want no more men. I had enough of those, and I'm ready to go with Jesus. So you give me your number. Knowing in my mind, I ain't calling him. I just need to get up out of here because I'm scared. I don't know what's getting ready to happen. So got his number, got in a jam where I was on the south side of Milwaukee, and get this, Denise, I was speeding in the neighborhood. I was 5 miles over. Police pulled me over, took me out of the car, fingerprinted me, and girl, I'm like, what is this? And he said, well, your plates are out of state. And I'm like, okay, so I'm just going with it. So now I didn't know what to do, what further steps to take. So I said, oh, I got Tony's number. Let me call him and see how I can pay this ticket. Called him. He told me what to do. The relationship started went on from there. And here it is, 29 years later, getting ready to be 30 next month. The woman who didn't want no man. And so, so we got married after 9 months of dating. So now I was kind of into him a little bit because he was assisting me along my Christian journey. I mean, I didn't know any churches around here. I didn't know any Christian music per se. So he was finding me the church that I needed because he knew I was of a contemporary flavor and he had gone to a traditional church. So he said, I got the right church for you. So he introduced me to CTK, but then he was getting me music and then he bought me a Bible. And so I was like, okay, I guess we can be friends.
Oh my gosh.
Not even thinking about marriage. I'm like, well, I knew I wasn't gonna get married because I already said it. So yeah, and so that happened, and then here it is, I would say 7 months because we took about 2 months to prepare for our wedding. So he proposed to me, and so I came to learn that he was a jokester, and he was comedic and all that. And so as he proposed to me, now here he is. I don't know how much time we got, but I'm just gonna share. So he took me on a date. He took me to the lake, horse-drawn carriage, and he had this ring. So he's getting ready to give me this ring. I'm like, oh my gosh, Denise. He had in a ring box, the little key rings that's on a keychain, and the carrot that you eat. He carved it out in a carrot, a diamond carrot. Denise, I was so mad. I took it and I threw it out the carriage. I was like, what is this? But he thought it was, I think he thought it was cute or unique because it was on a ring and it was a carrot, a diamond in the shape of a diamond. But I didn't find that funny at all.
I can't stop laughing.
I didn't find it funny at all.
Hilarious. I have known you guys for a number of years, and I have never heard this story. That is hilarious.
Yeah.
You should have kept that ring.
Everybody thought it was funny.
Sake of it all. You had to know he had a fast follower coming, right?
No, I didn't. I promise you I didn't. Because all of this just came suddenly. Like I said, I wasn't thinking about marriage. I mean, we were in the dating mode, like I said. But yeah, when he gave me that, I was like, what? And I threw it. Like I said, I threw it. So then he pulled out another one. And I was getting ready to throw that. He said, wait, that's the real thing. So then
That's beautiful. See, he made a very memorable. I think a lot of women would have thrown it too, but he made a very lasting memory.
He did.
And I am sure your beautiful granddaughters are going to have a good time with that story over the years. Once you share that with them, that is amazing. So let me ask you this. It sounds like he helped to facilitate you growing and developing your relationship in Christ. Now, was he a pastor at that time and you didn't know, or minister at that time and you didn't know? Like, how did you get to the point of, getting introduced to him helping you with the Bible and finding a church and music and all of that, to I'm now a pastor's wife?
Yeah. It all happened so so fast. No, so he wasn't a pastor. He wasn't even a minister. While we were dating, he worked in the church, and he assisted the pastor a lot, but he didn't have the title of a minister. And so probably 3 or 4 months into our dating, he had his trial sermon. So he was preparing to be a minister, or a reverend, they called them at Pilgrim Rest, reverends. Mm-hmm. So he did his trial sermon, and he did his trial sermon. He got charged as a minister, or prepared to be a minister, and he worked in the church under that assignment. And so let's see. So then we did get married. So it had to be like 4 or 5 months. So he became minister. We got married. That was 89. So in the year of 93, his pastor at the time, Pastor Mixon, he was grooming him. He was grooming him nicely. And he kept telling him, and Pastor Mixon, he was a man of few words, but they were impactful. And he kept saying, the Lord is going to show you something. The Lord is going to show you something. So he would preach at different churches as a minister, guest preacher and all that. But it came to the place where the church where we are now, Jericho, they needed a pastor. But my husband was going there preaching on Sundays, just filling in, because the pastor had resigned and they didn't have a pastor. So it had to be like, and then he was teaching on Mondays. They had Bible class on Mondays. So it had to be like the 3rd or 4th time. And then the Deacon Brown at that time, he, man, a few words, we want you. We want you. It's like, we want you what? We want you to be our pastor. Girl, we went into that office. I told him, I don't want to be no pastor's wife. I said, I'm going to have to wear hats, because I always had my hair together. I'm like, I ain't putting no hat on my head. And I'm going to have to smile at people when I don't feel like smiling. Girl, I remember that too. It's like, I'm going to have to wear hats, and I'm going to have to wear smiles when I don't feel like smiling. And he said, Robin, just be yourself. And okay. Wow. After he said, be yourself, I was like, okay, thank you. I appreciate that, because I didn't know what that was going to look like, a pastor's wife. I mean, going from dating a minister for a couple of years to now becoming pastor. And at that time, this one, they had, I think it was like, they went from a huge church, not huge, but maybe 300 or 400 people to like 7 people and $6 in the bank. And wow. It's like, okay, what are we going to do with this? Wow. So it was very different. And I was a woman that loved to wear pants. They wasn't for that. So one of the mothers pulled me to the side and said, Sister Burns, I don't think you should be wearing pants. I said, huh? She said, yeah. I said, well, why not? She said, I don't know. I just think you shouldn't be wearing pants. And I said, well, if I do what you tell me to do, or what you think I should do, and then I do with the next person, then where do I come in, where I get to make my own decisions? Mm-hmm. Do you know that within probably a month's time, this woman started wearing pants? I freed her. But it was interesting to see the traditional aspects of that church, or of our church, but how it evolved and it changed as we became pastor and first lady. Yeah, so it was a whirlwind, but God was in the whirlwind. And at that time, Leon was, I think, 4 or 5 months old. Yeah, maybe even a year, because it was 93. Yeah, he was a year. He was born in May of 93, and then they ordained him as pastor in December of 93. So yeah, so all that happened. And then at the time I was teaching at my church, and it was like, I don't want to leave my church. I was enjoying my church, the contemporary music. You know, I had experienced his church. You know, they were traditional, and they were a lot, but it wasn't nothing like my church. So then when they called him, my husband never told me to leave my church. And we had already talked to both of our pastors, because we were wondering, okay, what's going to happen now that we're married, but he still has responsibilities at his church and I have responsibilities at my church. And they said, long as we were worshiping the same God, we would be okay. Well, God knew that months later, a year later or whatever, he would bring us together. And so I joined Jericho the next week after my husband had become pastor. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, what a very, I guess it has so much depth to the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times people think you just appear into this role, right? And they
Yeah,
think you
yeah.
just landed like, voila,
Right,
she's first lady.
right, right.
But through that process, you had your own journey,
Yes,
right? Your
yes,
own personal journey, not just with being saved, not with just being a woman, but being a wife, and
yeah,
then assuming this role
yeah.
as at the front seat. And that's
Right,
one of my questions, right? Because you're in the
right.
front row of so much going on, so many priceless moments, like many of which you walk through in your own relationship, and many that you have enjoyed as being his wife. Tell us
Mm-hmm.
about that front row seat and some of the things that have been enjoyable from you in that place.
Sure. Well, let me first start off by saying I didn't want the front row seat. Didn't want that. I forgot to make mention of that to him when I said I didn't want to wear no hats and I didn't want to do the smiles. I didn't want to sit up front. And I didn't for a long
You
time
didn't
because it
want
was
none of
like,
this. You like,
right, I did not sign up for this. Who signed me? God, we didn't talk about this. You didn't speak to me.
what
And
you say?
so,
Now I want to just go back and get that soda. Can we just go get that soda?
right, right. Right. And so for a while, my husband was very understanding, and he has never been, and was never, even at the beginning, forceful and trying to make me do things. So that helped me out a lot. And so I didn't sit up in the front seat probably for about a year. No, it might have been longer than that. I just didn't want to be up front. Why am I up front? And so I didn't understand the position of being first lady, my role. I was thrust into that position, and I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anybody to lead me and guide me along the way. I did see how some treated my first lady at that time, and I saw how even his first lady at that time, she wasn't up front. She wasn't up front, and she wasn't as engaged in ministry as my first lady was. But she wasn't up front either because she sang in the choir. So it was like, you know, those were my two prime examples. But I just knew I personally didn't want to be up front.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how I made my way up front. I think it got to that place where I believe he did set it up where he said, okay, we're going to sit up front because one, you don't need to sit, because I would sit probably like midway on the left-hand side. And at that time I did have Leon, and he was a little baby. And so I needed to be able to get up and leave. And I didn't know those people, and I wasn't just handing him over to them to care for him while we were in service. And so, yeah, I gradually made my way up there. But transitioning to that and then understanding that we were leading people, like I said, Denise, all of this I was thrust into. I didn't have a book on this. I didn't even think to look up how to be a first lady. I went with the flow. I went with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
But it was God leading me and guiding me along the way and being patient with me. He's like, my child, my daughter, Robin. I know he was probably just up in heaven like, let me help you, my daughter. But being obedient, and when I say being obedient to God first and foremost, and just doing what he's called me to do, and then even being obedient to my husband and whatever he asked me to do, I did that. I might have kicked and screamed a little bit, but I got over it.
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding that now we're in leadership position and we have to help the people. We have to pray for the people. We have to be there for the people. And I had to grow to that place. And immediately that's where prayer became a powerful, powerful tool for me, because I knew that I had just left Gary and I'm getting in this relationship with God, and I knew I wanted to grow in him. And so part of growing in him was talking to him, establishing a relationship with him, praying to him. So prayer was a powerful tool that helped me and has helped me along the way. So with praying and knowing that I could take my burdens to the Lord and leave them there, and I could cast my cares on him, he helped me to see that these are his people. I have to love them no matter who they are, what they do, da 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 da. And learning that and knowing that, then my focus shifted. It wasn't about me wanting to sit up front, wear a hat and wear pants and all. It was about caring for God's people. And so when I realized that God spared me and he kept me, because I could have been out on the streets, I could have been crazy, I could have been, I could have been a lot of stuff, but because he spared me, I said, okay, I want to work for you, God. I want to do what you've called me to do or what you need me to do. And so when I yielded and surrendered, then I think that made things much easier.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really good. So tell us your perspective on the concept or this perception that since he's a pastor, that makes you a pastor or you a co-pastor. Like what, because sometimes people are just automatic, right? With putting that title on you along with expectations on you, some of which you talked about, even with just assuming the role of first lady or just being his wife. What do you think about that perspective, and how does that make you feel as a wife, as a first lady, when they kind of just assume you're pastor or co-pastor or something like that?
Yep. I mean, when I saw the question, thought about it, I was like, oh, that was something that I didn't like either. I think it was a couple of things that I didn't like, I didn't agree with, but I kind of went with the flow. When we were fully established in this position, I always told people, call me Sister Burns, Sister Burns. And they would want to call me First Lady Burns. And I'm like, and see, all of that, I just didn't know. I just knew, I knew there were first ladies and all that, but I didn't want that. I didn't want to be out front. I didn't want this name where people would just, I don't know. I didn't want that title. Sister Burns was good for me. And then when they started calling me First Lady, and then as we went on, we got connected with Bishop Hilliard and Pastor Bridget. And when we got connected with them, they became our spiritual parents, and they were very let's see, what's the word? They were in tune with that, and they saw that as the position, pastor and co-pastor. I didn't see that as a position for me. I wasn't a co-pastor because I thought in my mind that I'm going to be up there preaching. I'm going to be up there. I'm going to be doing pretty much what he's doing, only on a smaller scale. And I wasn't for it. When I came in, well, prior to coming to Jericho, I was teaching children in Sunday school. So that was my role. I loved that. And when I came to Jericho, I continued in that. So I wanted to teach the children. Then my husband asked me to teach the adults. And I was like, I don't know what to tell them. So he guided me a long way. So I went from teaching children at CTK to teaching adults, and then teaching young adults or youth. So getting that title, First Lady and co-pastor, I went with it. Again, I went with the flow. And they gave us, when we became members of AIM, they gave us certificates, and it had on there co-pastor Robin Burns. I'm like, no, I don't want to be a co-pastor. So I said, I'm gonna be me. I'm gonna do what God has called me to do. Don't worry about the title. And I used to cringe when they used to, I had some other pastors' wives that were pastors or co-pastor, and they would say, Pastor Robin. I'm like, that's not my name. But I would just go with it. I would go with it, and just live. I would just do what God had called me to do, and accept the title, be okay with it. And yeah.
I guess what I see in your marriage is one that's pretty synonymous with many, in that there is a place that God was grooming to take you to. And sometimes, even in our relationship, we don't want to be as open. We don't want to be as sacrificial. We don't want to be as cleaving. We don't want to bond as much. We want independence instead of interdependence. Like all of these different things come to play. But he was working that out in you over
Yes.
that time. And I
Yes.
think the beautiful part in this is that your husband recognized that he could not push it on you,
Right.
because that probably would have been very detrimental to your relationship with
My
him if
goodness.
he
Yes.
was trying to force something on you that God was already working out in his perfect time for you to be very accepting of
Yeah.
the call he had on his life. And if you really think about it, when all of this started, you were just starting your journey with Christ to begin with, right?
Absolutely.
And so a lot
Absolutely.
of this, you had to grow and develop. One of the things I like to say all the time is, in order for us to grow relationally, we got to grow personally. And that's what
Hmm.
you exhibited. You had to do that personal growth so
For
that you
sure.
could grow relationally, even with your role in the church, your role in ministry, your role even with your husband and his responsibility. It took that
Hmm.
personal growth. And what you shared with us is a very introspective look into what was working out, because the things you kicked against, right?
Hmm.
What you
Hmm.
didn't like are
Right.
probably things that you have grown to love now
My
over
God, spot
time.
on. That's right. Yep, you got it. You got it. Absolutely. And my new phrase is God knew. He knew. he 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 foresaw all of this. He knew me when I was in my mother's womb. He knew where I was going, what I was going to go through. But his main goal was to see me lean, trust, and depend on him. And if I could do that, and there were many things I didn't understand, many things I didn't want to do, but if I surrendered myself to him, he made it easy. He made it worth the while. And so I said, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with it. What else, Lord? What else do you want me to do? It's a scary, scary thing to be wide open like that. What do you want me to do, God? But knowing that he's got me and he's there with me, I can go through whatever comes my way,
Mhm.
to know that my Father, my God, the one who created me, is gonna back me up and is gonna help me along the way. I'm good. I may be trembling, yet I'm trusting. I may be crying, but I'm still strong in him. And so yeah, you nailed it. You
Yeah,
nailed it.
that's awesome. So you're surrounded not only by the church congregation, but a lot of your husband's family, I discovered as a
Uh-huh.
result of being there. And it's an excellent commitment and support. But tell us about that experience, because you don't have an escape. Like, your family is not there. His
Right,
family has lovingly embraced you and taken
right,
you in, but you've got this church makeup of a lot of family. And so tell
right.
us about that experience.
It's been good actually, and I've heard horror stories. I've heard horror stories, but it's been good. God has protected his daughter, because family can be different. Family can be very different. Family can be protective, and for Tony, Pastor Tony, coming from a large family, a big family, and he being who he is, everybody loved Tony. Like everybody loved Tony.
Mhm.
And so he had to make it known that if you're gonna love me, you gotta love my wife.
Mhm.
And so when I came into the picture, it's kind of like I was interrupting their program, because it was always Tony. Tony did this. Tony helped out here. Tony, it was Tony. But they openly received me. And then when it came to the church, because when he first started pastoring, most of his family was either, well, some of them were still at Pilgrim Rest, or some of them had not even been in church for a while.
Mhm.
And so they were directed to come over and help Tony at the church.
Yeah, that's what his mama said.
Yeah. Right. There you go. You remember that? Yes.
Yes,
Mama said, come
mama
and help
said.
Tony. And they did what Mama said. They better do what Mama did say. And so they did that. And it was really through the teaching and guidance of our dear friends, Pastor or Apostle Linnell D. Caldwell and Lady Carol. They came over and they kind of helped us to set order in that and some other areas in the church, because I I didn't have, I mean, I knew about other pastors' wives, and they were trying to get me into pastors' wives clubs, if you will. And it's like, I don't want to do that. I just didn't. And my husband's like, Robin, you need to get connected. And I was like, I don't need to know these ladies. I don't want to know what they, no. And so with that, when Apostle Caldwell, or Pastor Caldwell at that time, he came and he helped the people to see that we are the leaders, and whether they're family members or people that we grew up with or knew or whatever, they are to respect us as such. And he told me, because I used to hang out, like be with them or whatever, but he said, they're not your friends. I'm like, but we are friends. I mean, we tight. We go to the store, we hang out, we go on trips and stuff. And he's like, nope, you're in a different position now. They're not your friends. And so you have to treat it as such. These are God's children. They're God's people. You are leaders. You are sheep. I mean, they are sheep, and you are to guide the sheep. So then that changed things. The respect was still there. I must say I've never been disrespected, at least not face to face, by the family members. And I believe that they, everybody got something to say about somebody. So they might have said something behind my back. I don't know. But for the most part, they've been respectful to me, and even calling me Lady Burns or First Lady or whatever. Most of them do that. And so it's been 29 years now, and they've been there. They've been supportive. I know a lot of times the family can still be protective even when it's in the church. It could be a help and it could be a hindrance. But when it comes to me, because my husband set he set it straight, and then Apostle came and set it straight, it's been straight for that period of time. So I must say that I've been good. I've been good. It hasn't been like, you know what, you can take your family and your church and I'm out of here, because I've seen that happen, yeah, so.
Right. So I remember a few years ago, you and Pastor Burns, you guys wrote a book about marriage. So tell us about that process, and even share a few nuggets, or is the book still available for people who may be interested? So tell us about that process of working together on it.
I don't know if you can see that. Let's see if we can get it where you can.
Yeah, there you go.
With this ring, yes, with this ring. This was a nice challenge for us, because we were at a place. Let me see, when did we write this? Was that 2009? I had just left my job. I resigned so that I could work in ministry with my husband. So in 2005, 2006, somewhere in there, I resigned. And so I began to work in ministry with my husband, which meant that, I was away from my teaching career to now go here. And so it was different in that I'm now working in the same place with him. So I'm working with him. I'm doing life with him. We still got to keep this thing together. We got to keep this. So we got to remember, first and foremost, that we were married, and then came the church, and, like children, so forth. But we had to keep ourselves as one. And so our book, With This Ring, it has various factors in here. We call them factors instead of principles. And with the factors, my husband, he's always alliterating. He decided to go with the letter O and give out 8 factors. So let me just do this part real quick. Oneness. So let me share the factors, because the Bible says the man shall leave his mother, or shall leave his parents, and they shall become one flesh. So we have the purpose of marriage, which is the oneness factor, importance of oneness. And so we got the opportunity factor, the optimistic factor, opposition, overcome oneself, obstinate, and opportunistic. So my favorite in here is the oneness factor. That became huge to me when I read the scripture that talks about being one, and where you are united and you work together, God commands the blessing. Where there is unity, God commands the blessing. Because early on in our marriage, we weren't one. Again, we didn't understand marriage, and we had challenges communicating. And so I was one to shut down. If you make me mad, or you hurt me, then I shut down. Don't talk to me. And so we had to realize that there's some things that we're dealing with, we got to work on, we got to improve. And out of those factors, the one that hit hard for me was the oneness factor. If we gonna be, because we talked about turning off the exit lights at the beginning. We ain't exiting. I said the only way I would exit is if he put his hands on me. If he put his hands on me, I'm gonna put my hands back on him and then I'm gone. It ain't gonna be no, oh, but he loves me. He hit me, but he loves me. No, hit me. Come. I'm talking bad now.
Okay,
I'm
she's
talking
scary, y'all. She told y'all that.
right. Sure. But understanding that we had to communicate, because he'll let it be known, and I used to say it all the time. He thought he knew everything. He was always right. What he said when, it's like, no, God, it's like, God, he ain't always right. He don't know it all. So help us to get a better communication system going. And that's what led us to going to retreats. And we had gone to a marriage retreat for over 16 years. And that's where we learned how to really be husband and wife, to be married, to be one, and to make it through our marriage successfully. We knew it was going to be some bumps and hurdles and all that, but to be able to make it through. And so knowing that if we're at a place of oneness and unity, and God is blessing that, that's where I want to be. I want to be where the blessings are flowing. I know it's going to be stuff coming our way, but I want to be at a place of oneness. So we looked at those areas, those factors, and we said, with this ring, and actually a song was sung at our wedding that was entitled With This Ring, that someone had written for us. So all of that tied in together, but that's the gist of the book that we wrote.
That's beautiful. I mean, I'm learning so much about you. This is really good, and I appreciate all your transparencies. Let me ask you this question.
Sure.
How can church members best support their pastor? You know, because you get a glimpse of him when the spotlight is not on, when he's carrying the burden, when he's overwhelmed by it all. You get a glimpse of him when he's earnestly praying, when he may not be as hopeful on his own, when he's sharing his inner thoughts. You get a glimpse from him when his faith is strong and when he's fighting for his faith.
Right.
And so help us understand from your perspective, his wife, right, who is laboring with him. How can we best support our pastor?
You know how as parents, we tell our children, didn't I tell you, or do what I tell you to do? You know, that's another title that we're given, spiritual parents, mother and father. And so a lot of times God allows us to see things that the members don't see. They don't even understand. And you know how the kids, as your natural children, they kind of buck against, or they may ask why we got to do this. It's like, just do what I tell you to do. Do what I told you to do. You don't have to understand it right now. Well, why? And so the best way that the members can support is to really just do what you're told and believe, trust in the man of God, so much so that it's like God talking to you, and God is telling you, do this. Do you trust God? Are you trusting God? Because sometimes, you know, we can buck against God. But as his manservant, being supportive means knowing that whatever he's telling us to do, because trust is earned. So if he's earned your trust, then knowing that whatever he's telling you to do is for your good, is for our good, is for the good of the kingdom, do it. Nike said it best, just do it. Gotta just do it. And I know people need clarification, and they need it kind of laid out for them. I understand that, I get that. But if you know that whatever we're working on, whatever goal we're trying to do, if you do it and you go along, you'll see the fruit of it, and you'll see that obedience brings blessings. And not only just being supportive or doing what you're asked to do as leaders and lay members, but praying for your man and woman of God. Prayer changes. We used to say prayer changes things. Prayer changes people. Prayer changes situations, circumstances. Prayer changes. And so knowing that the enemy is after the man of God, he doesn't want to know, because he got just a glimpse of who he is as a man of God and the potential that he has to take the kingdom further. So the enemy is hating on that. So if he can stop the people and have them buck against the man of God and be disobedient, then he's done his job. But if they know, nope, I've been called to support my man of God, to pray for my man of God, to work alongside him, then I'm going to do that, knowing that God is pleased with that. Then that makes the journey all the better. So supporting means doing as you're told, following the man of God's vision, and praying for him and his family.
That's awesome. And as a family, right,
Mm-hmm.
you are you are placed into this realm of expectations, right? Some of them are realistic and some
Mm-hmm.
of them are unrealistic. Tell us how that feels, because you've got to navigate this course as a mom. You got
Mm-hmm.
children. You're trying to keep your family unit together. You're trying to make sure everybody can go forward, right? At the end of
Right.
the day. And believe me, I know I got a 22-year-old and a 20-year-old. So I no. How does that feel, that extra pressure? Because for some reason, it just seems like the expectations on that first family are intense. And how do you stay safe under that lens? And when I mean safe is keep it together, keep your bond strong, make sure that your family unit is good, and try to cast out the noise. So how do you stay safe, and how can we understand more how that feels?
Yeah. And people think it's a cliche when I say it, but pray, and pray some more. God has been my source. He has been my keeper. If I didn't have God in my life, I probably would have lost it, and some other people would have lost it too. They would have been, yeah, they wouldn't be here. I'm telling you, I've heard so many different stories. It's like, how could you do that as a pastor or a pastor's wife? But a lot of times, some people, many of them are in that role, but they don't accept the um the mantle or the demand that's on their life, and understand that this is ordained by God. You can't just get in and say, I want to be a pastor, and not live right, not know that God is there for you. I mean, it's so many other intricacies in being pastor and wife and first family and all that, that if you don't get a hold on that, you can be lost in that, and you can just be a carnal, you can just be out there doing whatever. So understanding that this is something that's God ordained, I go to him. He's my source. So when stuff is going down, I pray, and I know that he hears me. And the answers may not come right away, but knowing that I can take it to him. And so people, I mean, they put us on the pedestal, but we didn't ask to be put on a pedestal. We're human too. We make mistakes, we sin, but we have to recognize that our position is very important, and God is looking for us to represent him well. And so I think for me, that's one of the most important parts, that I want to please God, I want to love his people, and just live a fulfilling life. And I'm a people person anyway, so I interact and I talk with people, but still keeping it all together as a family. You're not going to run over me. You're not going to disrespect me. You're not going to disrespect my family and all of that. So I will say something. I'm going to call you out. I ain't going to just let you dog me out and be like, okay, God, now that may be a time where I'm going to go straight to talk to him. Well, I may say, God, give me the words to say, but you ain't going to disrespect me. And so knowing how to handle things when things come our way as a family. Because one thing I didn't know or didn't really realize or even think about, we had a talk one day with our boys, and I guess they experienced church people not being so nice. So they were finding out that people were lying on us, talking about us, just some negative stuff. And they were starting to have a hardened heart. And here they were, young adults, maybe even teenagers, and experiencing this. It was like, wow, I didn't know that. So they didn't come to us with it, but they would come to y'all, and they would talk to our children. And it's like, no, this ain't right. So then that would have to be nipped in the bud as well. So it was a lot of different things. So as they came, just knowing how to deal with them, and knowing, getting that advice from God, and knowing that we can go through anything, but we got to do it the right way. We got to do it the right way. So we've been kept together by the prayers of Mama Burns, but still knowing how to deal with life. I mean, when Lemar, when he had Gab, or when they had Gabby, that was a blow to us, but it helped us to see that we're not alone. And they would think that, because they would say preacher's kids, preacher's kids, they do this, this, and this, and they get away with this. And I never said that my children were perfect. I used to always tell the teachers, call me, because I know my children ain't perfect. I know they can act up in school. It would never be like, oh, really? My son Lemar, he got into a fight? I said, no, never. No, call me, because they children, and they gonna do what children do. And they, whether they got into other stuff as they became young adults and all that. But mainly when Gabby came, we were like, okay, how are we going to deal with this? How are we going to handle this with the church? And, we talked to various pastors of a greater degree, and they shared with us, it happens. And because people put us at high expectations and on a pedestal, they expect us to do no wrong, to not have children out of wedlock, to not sin, pretty much. But it happens. And so knowing how to deal with that and move on in life and understand that it happens. At first, we were a little embarrassed, because it was like, sort of like, really, we taught y'all, we trained up you as children in the way that you should go. But understanding that these things happen. But again, God knew that Gabriella was going to come. God knew that Alila was going to come. They didn't come the way we wanted them to, but they came. So life happens, but we still keep it together. We don't let anything or anybody come in between us, because we know that that's a tactic of the enemy. And if he can break us apart, then he can get to the rest. And so we got to keep it tight.
Absolutely. And we all know that everybody who has been afforded the opportunity to live life is here because God has a purpose for their lives. And, I reflect on Pastor Burns' testimony, even that he has shared often about where his life began, right? And look at the greatness that has manifested. Look at the lives that have been changed. And that story may not have been as pretty up front, it may not have been with what was desired back then, but God had a purpose that in the year he was born, something unique needed to happen, and it manifested all the way through. And so you're right. One thing I know for sure is we all need forgiveness. We all need to wake up to those new mercies that God lovingly grants us each and every day.
Every day.
And so with that, we may have plans, but God's ultimate sovereignty is going to accomplish the purpose that he sees fit happen. And we just got to be like, okay, God, let's shift, right? We're in this mode now.
Hello.
And being able to pursue in that way. And so I know it's hard when you look at these expectations and, you look at it with the spotlight, the celebrity, the fame, or the attention, or even the impact and transformation that you guys are having there with the congregation and with the church. It's going to be challenged by the enemy, like you said, but he is still going to get the glory and manifest what needs to happen. And to me, that's the priceless part of it all, and the part that we get to rejoice by. Yeah. All right, so just two more questions for you, and I have enjoyed this. Like
Me too.
I have really enjoyed this. What's the most important thing that you learned as a pastor's wife?
The most important thing that I learned as a pastor's wife is that I can love God, that I should love God, I need to love God, stand up for my man of God, pray for my man of God, and support my man of God. I have to, as a pastor's wife, I have to be there for him, because he's on the forefront and so many darts and things are coming at him. I gotta support him. And I cannot be bitter when I see negativity come his way, or people flip the script on you, or people act a fool on you, or whatever. I gotta still support him, pray for act a fool. Not ACT, ACKA, ACKA, Act a fool.
Now, y'all just gotta know how particular she is with grammar and words for her to say.
Right. Yeah. They straight out of character when the T has to be replaced with CK, act a fool. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Here's where I say that translates, and I'll just let you into a little bit. Many of you know my husband's mother passed away, and I had to have a very hard conversation with someone on my husband's behalf. And I had to say, you know, to your point where you like, I got to defend my man, I got to defend my husband too. And I had to step into those shoes and say, hold up, that, you know, you can't come at him that way. And you need to be more sensitive about what he's dealing with. He's grieving right now. And so it's interesting because though our experience and context may be different, as a wife, those are shoes that we need to walk in and have confidence to be able to walk in and say, hold up now, I'm going to represent mine.
Right, exactly. That's good. That's good.
Yeah. And so we'll end with this. What's your wife wisdom? You know, you shared a lot, so I'm just tugging one more time, right? What's your wife wisdom that you would share with any wife when it comes to marriage? What's that key nugget that we should take away?
Give it up.
You know, my
Sex him up. I thought I'd add a little laughter to the end of
my mind went straight there, okay?
Where there is unity, God commands the blessing. I'm telling you.
But the first lady has said, give it up. You know what she meant, okay? So come together with your husband. Don't be holding back.
Don't hold back, because when you give him, when he experiences that due diligence, that releases because that means he knows that, and if you loving him genuinely, sincerely, he can be free, you know, and their thought of, I'll just say their thought of sex is totally different from how we think of now. There's some rare women who want it, you know, more power to you. But the husband, he has that great desire to want to be loved and to be intimate. We have the desire to be cared for, protected. And so if we know that we are providing what he needs, then we'll get what we need for the most part. I mean, if you're going with the flow in the right way. And then it's amazing because this is something that's ordained by God and he established it, then you got to know it's going to be good. It's beneficial. It's a win-win situation. And so, because I remember early on, I promise you, every time he got ready to want every time, it was like I got a headache. And I knew it was from past relationships and just really being in that place of fornication, and then understanding that now I'm in a right relationship. Sex is a good thing right now. Back then it wasn't. I was just, so being intimate and sharing with my partner and giving him what he wants, it made all the difference. And so now we thinking on one accord, we finishing each other's thoughts. We happy, he's good, I'm good. And so, yeah.
I love the connection, because a lot of people don't understand how that fits in relationship. And what you helped us to bridge the gap on is that helps us create that flow, that continuity, that connectivity. You're talking about finishing sentences and you're trying to think to yourself, now, how does this play into that? It's a divine thing that you just don't understand when you make a connection and you keep the connection consistent, loving, enjoyable. I say go as far as you want to go, as long as you are you.
Right.
No reason to say no. At least try it one more time.
Exactly.
And then figure out if you like it or not, and have conversations about it. And what I love and I appreciate in this moment and you sharing that is that we have this air of it's so mystique. But I'm glad to hear you say that is a vital part that keeps your relationship strong. Yes. And you're saying that in a conversation where I'm talking about you being the first lady. Mm-hmm. So I think that example is so rich for us because it becomes so taboo, right? Like Like we acting like ain't nobody doing it.
Right.
Ain't nobody doing that. And that is not what God intended. It's
Exactly.
beautiful, especially when you're in the position of loving one another in a marriage relationship. That is a beautiful thing.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you so much. I'm sure I'm going to tap into you again and say, come back and talk some more because your stories,
You didn't know all that, huh?
beautiful. They are
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Thank you so much. I love you. Now, well, wasn't that a wonderful conversation? I always get nuggets of wisdom from First Lady Robin L. Burns, and I'm sure you grabbed a couple too. As I told you at the onset, this episode was going to be a good one, and it did not disappoint. I hope that you're encouraged in your marriage relationship to press on and go a little further. And know that if you do attend the church, your first family definitely needs your prayers and support. So before we leave, I want to again invite you to be a part of Love Walk. Don't miss your opportunity to grow personally so that you can soar relationally. Let me help you get to where you want to go. All right, good people. We'll see you on the next episode. Like, share, and thrive.